Hi Year 9. This video will help you with the skills needed to work your way through exercise 2H using formulas. So in our previous topic of measurement, as you know, we used a number of different formulas, and some of those are on the screen there in front of you, as well as many others that you know. So in this exercise you might be using formulas like these ones that you've seen before, or maybe some that you've seen before in science, or you could come across formulas in this exercise that you've never seen before. Now, it doesn't really matter whether you've seen the formula before or not. The algebra skills that you're going to use are the same regardless. So let's start off with an example of a formula that you do know, and that's the area of a trapezium. So in this example, we're being asked to calculate the area if we know the short length, the long length, and the height, the vertical height of that trapezium. So with your formula, when you're writing out the formula, a half of short length plus the long length times by the vertical height, the A in this particular formula is known as the subject. So A equals means A is the subject of this formula. So in this case, we're being asked to calculate A if we know the value of A, B, and H. So you already have the skills of substitution, and that's what we're using in this case. So if we were working this formula by hand and we were figuring out calculating what A is by hand, we would be writing down A equals and then substituting into that formula all of the values of the pronumerals that we are given. So in this case, we know little a, and we know little b, and we know h. So it's just a straightforward matter of simplifying that right-hand side of that formula and calculating an answer. So with order of operations, you know to work out the bracket first. So the area is going to be a half of 14 times 4. Easiest way to simplify that, I think, is either to go a half of 4 is 2 and go 2 times 14, or to go a half of 14 is 7 and 7 times 4 is 28. Okay, so half of 14, 7, 7 times 4, 28, and because it's an area, centimetres squared. So it's pretty straightforward. If you were using your calculator to answer that one, obviously we need to put in there our fraction template, starting off, and a half multiplied by a plus b, so 6 plus 8, times 4, and done. So 28. So pretty happy with that one. So that sort of question's quite straightforward. If we're doing the next example, it's not quite so straightforward because this time we're not calculating the subject of this formula, but we're calculating one of the other variables. So in this case, when we're looking at the formula, A equals 12 in this case. So if we're substituting in and doing this by hand, we'd first of all start off by writing 12 is equal to a half of A is 5, B is unknown, and H is 4. So again, similar idea, substituting, then simplifying down our answer to end up with little b equals. So our whole task, if we're doing this by hand, is to try and simplify this right-hand side to get b on its own. So we've got to undo all of these things that have been done to b to start with. So probably the easiest thing to do when you're simplifying, I'm looking at this half and this 4, and I know a half of 4 is 2. So to me, this looks nicer than what I have. So that's a simplified version of what I already had. Now I'm still trying to undo things here and try and make this b equals. So if I got rid of this 2, by dividing both sides of this equation by 2, I could do that. So it's getting simpler and simpler each step. And in this case, the only thing then I need to try and undo is this 5, this plus 5. So to get b on its own, if I subtracted 5 from both sides of the equation, I would end up with b is equal to 6 take away 5, b is 1. Much, much simpler to do on the calculator than it is to do by hand. And to go through the calculator skills for this one, you may have seen these ones before: menu, algebra, and solve. And then I'm going to just type in this top line here of the equation, exactly as it looks there. So if I'm typing in, I want to solve this equation, 12 is equal to, fraction template, a half of 5 plus b. So I'm taking care to write it exactly as it looks as I've written it down first, times 4. And what I want to solve this equation, I want to solve it for b. So I put in there, tell the calculator, comma b. And it solves the equation in one step and tells me b is 1. So that's one example. If you're using a formula you haven't seen before, something like the volume of a pyramid, so you wouldn't have used this one in Year 9, but it doesn't matter that you don't know this formula. The algebra skills are exactly the same. So in this case, if we wanted to calculate v, and you can see from the formula up above that v is the subject, so this is a straightforward version of this skill. So I'm trying to calculate v equals, I know the formula is 1/3 of the area of the base, which in this case a is 10, times by the height of the pyramid, and I know the height is 9. Okay, so straightforward calculation, 1/3 of 10 times 9, 1/3 of 90 basically is 30, and its volume, so it would be centimetres cubed. So again, quite a straightforward calculation if we're trying to calculate the subject of this formula. If we're not doing the subject of the formula, so say I was doing the same pyramid, but I'm trying to calculate the area of the base if I knew the volume and the height. So as long as I know, out of those 3 measurements, as long as I know 2 of them, I can solve the third one. So in this case, I'm looking to calculate A. So I know the formula is V equals 1/3. So I know V is 15. So in this case, 15 is equal to 1/3 of the area, which I don't know, times the height. So again, I don't know the subject this time. So it's a bit of messing around and manipulating and rearranging the formula in order to try and get this A by itself if I'm doing this skill by hand. So if I was doing this one by hand, I would be trying to simplify by calculating 1/3 of 9 is 3 times A is equal to 15. So then it just becomes a matter of undoing the times 3 by dividing by 3 and doing it on both sides. So I've balanced my equation both times. So I end up with A is equal to 15 divided by 3, 5. And if we're being particular here, centimetres squared, because it's an area measurement. If you were doing this one by calculator, because I don't know the subject, I need to solve this equation for A. So I need to use the solve function again. So if you remember in the menu, algebra, solve, if you can't find the menu for solve, you can easily just type the word solve and a bracket. Does the same job. 15 is equal to, fraction template, 1/3 of, so times A times 9, comma A, because I want the calculator to solve that equation for A. When I hit enter, you'll see A is 5. So very easy to do with the solve function without having to do any rearranging. Keep going, one more just to do a little bit more practice of the same thing. This time I'm being asked to calculate H, or the height of this pyramid, if I knew the area of the base and the volume of the pyramid. So again, I don't know the subject of this formula. So I know V is 14. So I'll put down 14 is equal to 1/3 times the area of the base times the height. So again, it's not an unknown subject, it's an unknown letter somewhere else in the formula. So if I was doing calculator, it would be a solve type question. If I'm doing it by hand, I've got to do a bit of rearranging to get that h by itself. So again, to simplify the right-hand side, a third of 6 is 2. 2 times h is 14. So that one's nice to do by hand. Divide by 2 both sides. I end up with h equals 7. So in this case, because all our measurements are in centimetres, h is a length measurement, so h would be 7 centimetres. Just to show you again that is the correct answer, hopefully, we'll do a solve. We don't know the subject, so I need to solve it for h. So let's go into Menu, Algebra, and Solve. 14, type the equation exactly as you see it, is equal to 1/3 of the area of the base, which is 6, times the height, which is unknown. Tell the calculator, solve it for h. Enter, h is 7. So the skills you need to be able to do on the calculator really is to use the solve function. And to get some practice for those questions, have a go at the suggested questions from exercise 2H.